Divine Set 11 is now out, and as usual on this channel, we are going to go over my first impressions of all the cards in the set. Mostly all of them. Of course, there are some commons that are not necessarily worthy of talking about too much. Break it up into nation format and go over everything. As usual, you can enjoy these videos in more of a podcast format and just sort of sit back and listen and have this on in the background. But I received some pretty good feedback regarding the format that we changed to starting from the last expansion, so we're going to stick with that and of course make it a little bit more appealing to look at as well. With that, let's take a look at the first of the nations in the set, Dragon Empire. Again, if you didn't tune into the previous sets one, the way that I divide these rankings is that S is usually either something that I believe will either change the meta completely because of this card's existence, or it is simply such a create a card virtually miracle that this even exists level of deck saving support that I feel like it has to be rated quite highly. Oftentimes, if a ride line gets remade and becomes really good all of a sudden, then that will also go into S as well. Jiva support is a little bit different though, because they actually remade the card that kind of fuels everything in the deck, which is the Trickstar, and now it is Trickstar and Swendy with a Prayer Dragon to boot. One of the first strong things about it is that this card is treated as both a Talisman and a Prayer Dragon. Its first effect says that in rear, deck, and drop, this is treated as both Trickstar Swendy and Trickstar, so if you need something to refer to just Trickstar names, such as just an overdress, then that will also work. And it also says that when you would choose original dresses for crossover dressing, which usually means you choose a Trickstar and a Prayer Dragon and put them two together and you crossover dress on top of them. So until now, it always required two cards. Now his effect says that this card is treated as a Trickstar and a Prayer Dragon as two cards. So therefore, you can now crossover dress into most of your Verenas with just one card, which is the biggest upgrade possible for this deck, and it completely just changes the card economy of the deck entirely. But that's not all, because it has two more effects actually. The first one is that when your unit would be attacked, you can choose this card from your original dress, which is the cards under the Verena usually, and send it to the Guardian Circle, and if you did, it gets plus 5k shield, therefore being a 10k shield you can access to any time. And the final effect is when the outer dress of this card would be sent to deck or bind zone, the original dress of that card all goes to drop instead. So that way, prison still does imprison, but if it's sent to bot deck or if it's bound, then it'll all go to drop, just like being retired, so that way you don't lose the original dresses. So the reason why I put this in S is just because of the fact that this has essentially solved the issue that Jiva has had for years. And the Jiva ride line itself, I wouldn't necessarily say was the worst ever. This being a Prayer Dragon technically makes the Deyu just better by default. But the fact that it has this consistency boost, it's searchable, it is also a extra defensive buff as well to the deck, and gives you a bit of this evasion against certain matchups, I think is overall very good. And I think this one card does change the Jiva deck entirely. In A, however, I do put the Ars Verena. Of course, this is the sort of package unit of this set. It's a grade 3 Verena form that is a crossover dress as well. So it crossover dresses with a Trickstar and a Prayer Dragon, one or more, but they all have to be different names. So that also means that you can just crossover dress over the Trickstar and Swendy as a one card crossover dress too. When you do crossover dress into it, for that turn, he chooses all of the cards in your drop and sends them to its original dress, but any auto effects that would activate when this would happen do not activate. So, you know, there were definitely some Prayer Dragons in the past that said stuff like draw a card and whatnot when it becomes an original dress. Those don't activate sadly, so it's not that good. And if it would leave the rearguard circle, then if it would be going to anywhere but the drop, then it sends all of its original dresses to drop as well. So that way even the prison will also actually send everything to drop as well. It's just the Verena itself that will get sent to the prison. I'm going to be using the prison example a lot in this video because prison is looking to be one of the best decks of this new format, especially after the buff Saga restriction. And then he says when in the crossover dress state, when this would attack, it gets plus 1000 power for that battle for every original dress. So if you have a big drop, then that's going to be very huge, but in the early games maybe not as big. And if this turn this unit has been stood by a card effect, then he gets +1 critical. But if you gave him +1 critical, he will retire himself at the end of the turn, which is also kind of a good thing in my opinion, because that does mean that you not only get your drop back in case you, I don't know, like put your twin cast or something into the original dress because of this effect, but also means that you get to evade any kind of like weird removal as well. But that's not all. There's one more effect of this card that I think is the reason why I put it in A, and it is that when this would would be discarded from your hand during your turn, you put it to soul, search your deck for a talisman, and discard it and shuffle your deck. To remind you, talisman are all Verena forms and also all the Trick Stars and Trick Moon and Verlord as well. So technically this could be played in buff Sagara just for the discard effect if you want to search out your 2 1-ofs, I guess. But the big thing, of course, is that it's a huge consistency boost for this deck in particular. You can find the new Trickstar in Swendy, you can find, of course, all the Verenas that you want to go for at any moment. So basically playing 4 of this is the good card on its own, but it's also basically an extra copy of all of your other Verenas because you can just toolbox them out like this. And this also allows you to just play a bit more greedy in your deck list and play 1-ofs that in the past might not have been worth it because you didn't have as stable ways to access them without, you know, betting on the top 7 to find them from search effects, whereas now you can really just bet on that and find them like that. So enough talking about Verena. It's definitely an A rank card, but Sadiq is also an A rank card. This card, people not have realized, is a Vilbale support. So he says when you call him, you reveal Vilbale from your right deck, or if your Vanguard is Vilbale, CB1, look at top 5 and find a card with grade equal to or lower than your Vanguard and call it to rear. It can be anything. And if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, then this unit gets plus 5k for the turn 2. So this means that you're already basically able to toolbox virtually anything out from your top 5. And because of that, I mean, you can do it on turn 2 if you play grade 3s, that there is a chance that you'll be whiffing some things, but from turn 3 onwards, basically everything in your deck is a target. It's a 15k attacker on top of that, but the last effect is what I think is particularly good, because at the end of the turn, if your Vilbale used 6 or more energy for its auto cost this turn, you retire him, and if you did, you either energy charge 3 or you choose a card from your drop and put it to your soul. For those of you that might not remember, Vilbale actually does have a requirement to soul blast a copy of itself for its full effect. So what's really good about this card is that after it has done that, you go to the end of turn, activate this guy's effect, and you put that Vilbale back into the soul so that even if you don't have Persona for next turn, you are still able to reuse that effect. If you're missing energy, you can do that instead, or of course on turn 3, for example, where you might not have the grade 3 in the drop yet, you can go for the energy instead. I do think that this patches up some of the issues that Vilbale has had really well, while also just being like virtually a Tith fault. Like CB1 top 5 call something is basically Tith fault. Doesn't add orders to your hand, unfortunately, but you don't really play orders too much in this deck to begin with. So I rate this card quite highly. I'm not sure if it's necessarily going to make Vilbale a really good deck all of a sudden, but I do think it is definitely a step in the right direction. Another card I rate very highly is the Rockbound Edge Dragon. This is a Varga support, and people were kind of disappointed that Varga wasn't getting like a new triple rare, and it's been so long since its last triple rare support. But I think this card is just about as good as a triple, honestly, because not just because it's a good card in general, but is really good in this coming format. His second effect says that in the drop, if your Vanguard is a Varga, you can Energy Blast 3 to call him from drop to rear. But if your Vanguard is in the Malworm state, for that turn he gets plus 5k power too. So 10k attacker that you can revive and also ditch easily for ride cost, does use energy that you've been using quite a bit for things like Falheart and like Shura's EB2 and stuff as well. But a Combine Rusher in this deck is very good, just because of course you are wiping out your own field all the time, and at the same time you don't want to be using EB2 for Shura all the time in order to bounce stuff to your hand. So instead you can use that energy to just revive stuff, and it's a 15k attacker, so it's overall good numbers. But that's not all. When he attacks, if your Vanguard's a Varga, he gets plus 5k, so now he's a 20k attacker if you combine both effects, and you may Soul Charge 1. This may Soul Charge 1 might not appear as much right now, but we are entering what I expect to be a prison meta. I've tested into the prison matchup before the deck came out, just with the usual playtesting group and people just kind of proxying stuff because we have WGP Tokyo the same weekend of release. And yes, the cards are legal on release in Japan, just like they are everywhere in the world now, much to my dismay. I do think Japan doesn't have an issue getting cards for the release weekend because, you know, card shops stock everything on the release day, but for the rest of the world, that is definitely, you know, shipping delays and, you know, tariffs and stuff don't make that as easy. So I don't think English really should be doing that. I think a 1 week delay was good, but that's not the point of this video. What's really good about this card is that Soul Charge 1 basically means that you now have extra soul to use to free the stuff that gets imprisoned. And honestly, I do think that that is going to be a very useful part of the effect, especially given that you can loop this now. Even just calling itself out from the prison means that you can refund that soul immediately, and that is also very good. So personally speaking, I rate this card very highly, and I do think that Varga has an overall pretty good matchup into a lot of what the expected meta is, such as Prison and Virgila, and so overall I do think that this card will be very good. Don't forget that Rokusei straight up single-handedly checks Virgila too, so I think for that reason it is definitely worth keeping attention to this card as well. The last card I put in A is the Ishua. She's a grade 1 that when called, energy blasts 3 to choose a Verena from drop and add it back to the hand. And her act effect is, if your Vanguard is a Nirvana, you retire her to choose a Prayer Dragon from your drop and call it to rear. This one card, when her 2 effects, basically gives you 2 cards out immediately. You can EB3 to, like, I don't know, add R, like anything that R's Verena discarded to your hand, and then after that you can retire her to call back the Trickstar and Swendy, and then immediately overdress on top of that. So she's essentially a 1-card combo into a full overdress. So to me, this reads pretty good. I do think energy might not even be that tight, to be honest, just because I think the energy users in the deck aren't necessarily the biggest priorities compared to something like this. So I personally think that she will likely see some play in Nirvana, but maybe I'm mistaken. It just reads very synergistic overall with what the deck wants to be doing. Moving on to B, this is where I'm going to put the Jolt Spark Dragon. So this is a grade 2 that every nation has, where they gain 5k for a certain condition, and when you guard with them, if you have 5 damage, or if your Vanguard has been hit this turn, you soul boss 1 to get 10k shield. Every nation got one of these, and I'm not very impressed with all of them because they're 15k attacker / 15k shields, but I feel like a lot of decks will just use cards like this that they have in their archetype, and if they don't, then likely they don't have the space for this kind of thing in the first place. So the Dragon Empire one says that if your opponent's grade 3 or greater during your turn and your opponent has 1 or less rearguard, which is a pretty tough condition, gets plus 5k power, and then the second effect already kind of explained. That first condition is pretty tough because for decks like Virgila, they only really remove 1, maybe 2, at most 3 of your opponent's rears a turn. So having 1 or less rears is honestly a pretty tough ask for generic in Dragon Empire, so this is already quite limited in use in the first place. But I'll put it in B in terms of cards that I feel like might see some use in certain decks but aren't necessarily like the worst, but not necessarily something that I think I'm feeling confident is going to be good either. The Rukaira is the next one. She's a grade 1 that supports the Dyna Parada deck from the last set. So just as a reminder, Dyna Parada basically lets you soul boss 1, look at top 5 call, a grade 2 or lower from among them, and when it attacks, it retires 2 or more up to 5 of your rear guards and does effects based on what it retired. So it either gets plus 5k, or not either, but it gets plus 5k for everything it retires. It gets plus 1 drive if you retired 3 or more. If you retired 4 or more, it basically does triple battle door to your opponent, so they have to guard with 3 cards from hand at the same time for that battle. So this new grade 1 basically says that when she's in the back row at the start of your battle phase, if you have a Dyna Parada Vanguard, then that's a grade 3 or greater, you can choose one of your other units in the same column as this unit and give it plus 5k for the turn. But I think the good part of this card is the second effect, which says that when she would be retired by your Dyna Parada grade 3 or greater's Vanguard effect, you EB3 to draw 1, but if she was played by your Vanguard's effect this turn, that cost goes down by Energy Blast 3. So basically she converts into a draw, which I think patches up the deck a little bit, doesn't necessarily make it that strong, but I think it's good enough that it will be played. Another support this deck got is the Patago Hefty, is the name of this dinosaur. So when he would be retired by your Dino Parada or your Dino Dragon grade 3 or greater Vanguard's effect from the front row, you can choose an opponent's rearguard and retire it. It's free, which I think is, you know, this will be played in that deck, but I think it also comes from a place of not having much better things to play in the first place. Finally, in C are cards that I don't necessarily think will be played, but are niche enough that they're worth to be introduced. First, we have the Soaking Draco Kid. So this one says that when your Ryumei Onsen, like the little onsen order, gets played, when it's in the drop, you get to Energy Blast 3 to call this to rear, and if your opponent's grade 3 or greater, he gets plus 5k for the turn. As a reminder, the order is a grade 2 that rests itself in the order zone to energy charge 1. So you're only playing this in energy heavy decks, I guess, and then getting Energy Blast 3 to call something. It's not the most synergistic, but I feel like if they keep releasing these cards that synergize with the order, then there's something you're gonna want to pick up eventually. It might just become an engine down the line, who knows? And then Artore gets another shout out in C tier as well. She is another Nirvana support that on Rearguard Circle Guardian Circle, if your Vanguard is a Nirvana grade 3 or greater, all of your grade 0 talisman units get plus 5k shield. So this of course is just meant for the Trickstar and Swendy, so that when you guard with it from original dress, it's a 15k shield. Don't think this will particularly be played, but it's more so for the art, honestly, that she's on here. And the final card is the Safour, very simple grade 3 that says once per turn Soul Blast 1, and for that turn, this unit can attack your opponent's back row as well. It's literally, what was his name again? Tejas from back in the day, but as a grade 3. This is annoying into Station, so if Station ever gets popular, this is just a generic that Dragon Empire can play in case they already don't have enough tools to take it out. Overall, Dragon Empire I feel like is a bit of a mixed bag. I think the support for Verena is very, very good. I think the support for Varga is very good, and also the Vilbel support is good too, but everything else kind of falls a little bit on the disappointing route. So if I had to rate the entire nation, I'd probably give it something like a 3 out of 5 with just a bit of an average score. Moving on to Dark States, this time around there are no S rankers unfortunately, but quite a few in A. I want to put the Colossus first, it's almost an S, but we're going to talk about the Glauwine deck and also the ride line of it too. So the grade 0 is this bird. The grade 1 says when it's ridden over by the grade 2, you soul blast 1, draw 2, and then choose a normal unit from your hand and reveal it, put it to the bottom of the deck. If you did not, you have to choose 2 cards from hand, discard them. So it's very similar to the Yell's ride line actually, where it gets to draw 2 and also ditch 1 essentially, but this happens when you ride over it rather than when you ride it. The grade 2 says when you ride a grade 3 Gear Dragon over it, which of course this deck is, you look at the top 5 cards of your deck, find 1 unit card. If it's a grade 3 or lower, you call it to rear. If it's not, then you add it to your hand and shuffle your deck. If you do not reveal anything, you call him out and then soul charge 1. If he does land on the rearguard circle, then during your turn, if your Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, he says that if any player's rearguard was bound this turn, he gets plus 5k. So don't really want to call him out. He's not necessarily that great, just a 15k attacker, but essentially you get some draw power and you also get to filter out 1 card. The grade 3 says once per turn, you bind 1 card from your soul to choose an opponent's rearguard and bottom deck it, which is very strong form of removal. And if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, he gets plus 5k for the turn. When he attacks, he combos 1 and puts 2 of your rearguards into the bind, and then you search your deck for cards that add up to the grade of the binded cards total grade up to 2, call them to the same column and shuffle your deck. So this means that if you chose 2 grade 2s, you will essentially be able to immediately call out the grade 4. The grade 4 is this really cool looking Colossus who says that he's 18k power, cannot be ridden, and in hand, if your Vanguard is Glauwined, grade 3 or greater, Energy Blast 3 and bind this to draw 2 cards. That's already quite good. But when he's called by Glauwined for that turn, he gets the following effects based on the total grades of all the dark states in your bind zone. So if you have 10 or more, once per turn, when he attacks for that turn, he gets plus 20k power, being a 38k attacker, and at the end of the turn, it binds itself and draws you a card. If your bind grade is 20 or more, then once per turn at the end of the battle attacked, you can almost want to stand it, so it's a 38k attacker that attacks twice. And if it's 30 or more grade, then he also gets a crit for that turn too, thus being a 38k 2 crit double attacker that if your persona is 48k, that being said, getting grade 30 total in your bind. I mean, having 3 of this guy in there, or 4 of this guy, I guess, is 16, so that already gets you pretty much halfway over. But because he has to be out of the bind zone when that happens, if you have 3, you've got 12. And then it kind of comes down to how many grade 3s and whatnot you're going to play in there. There are quite a few Gear Dragon supporting self-binding cards that work with Chronojet or the Rewinder Dragon. So I personally have not done the maths on like how far and how fast you can achieve this, but generally speaking, being able to deck thin while drawing cards, you know, just from calling this or using it from hand. I mean, if you have it in hand, I feel like you always want to just use it as much as possible. Like if you happen to open all 3 of them, EB9 going second, bind all 3, draw 6, like that sounds quite insane. The fact that you could technically also play the 4B to search out this as your grade 4 from deck is also pretty good. So I feel like that could be the Regulus piece for this deck as well. And even if you don't call this, I mean, I guess you can technically, if you bind a grade 2 and a 1, you can also call out a grade 2 and a 1. But I do feel a bit of potential from this deck. I don't think it's necessarily that good, but we do have quite a few Gear Dragons that have come out until now. So I do think that it's worth to test around, and I wouldn't be surprised, you know, at the very least, seeing this win locals. I don't think it's as much of a copium deck as some of the other random ride lines we've gotten over time. I'm not too sure what the plus 5k gain on the Vanguard is, other than the fact that it's just there to make good numbers in case you swing with just the Vanguard. So overall, fairly impressed with just this alone. Then Lavenjader, the support for Jejuled, I would also put an A here as well. He says when discarded from hand during your turn, you can choose a card from drop and put it to soul, which means that this makes it easy to put your Jejuled into soul for the Jejuled Magnus front row buff. Once per turn, when attacks a grade 3 or greater, if your soul has 4 more different grades, then it gets plus 10k for the turn. It's another, you guessed it, restanding rearguard that gets plus 10k for the turn, because when your Jejuled Vanguard soul blasts 4 more different grades at the same time, not different grades, sorry, just soul blasts 4 more at the same time, If your opponent's grade 3 or greater, cannot must 1, stand this. It's literally just a grade 3 version of Rockagore. This is now the 5th rearguard restander in Rejewel, by the way. I'm not sure why that's the deck's entire identity, but I mean, I'm not like the discard to put something to soul from drop is really not too bad, but I don't think it's something you're gonna necessarily run as a 4 of, but I mean, good to have, question mark. Anyway, last card that I want to mention in the A tier is the Corbriar. This is Grugio support. It's a grade 1 that says if your Vanguard is Grugio, gets the following effect. When placed on rear, look at top 5, choose 1, put it to soul, shuffle your deck, then you can energy blast 3 and choose a card from your soul that is different name from this, that is grade 3 or lower, and call it. That's already quite good. But second effect says that when your Vanguard would put a unit to soul, this counts as 2. So Grugio puts 2 cards to soul for its cost. We already had a card that treated itself as 2 before, but that was like its only effect. This having a board building effect on top of that is actually quite good. There was that Kerberos in the past that kind of called itself out from soul, so that combined with this already makes you like 3 units on board, which is really not too bad for a deck that wants to put its units to soul and then you can call them out again. So overall, I think this is fairly good support for Grugio, but if you're an Grugio main, you can feel free to let me know in the comments if I'm wrong about that. Moving on to B tier, I'm going to put Mary in here. She is a Liel support that says she's a grade 2 that counts as a grade 3 in deck. During your turn, if your Vanguard's a Liel grade 3 or greater, she gets plus 5k, and if you have 4 or more gauge, she gets plus 10k instead, and if you have any gauge, she gets plus 5k shield too. So her being counted as a grade 3 means that the grade 1 from the last set that lets you top 7 for a grade 3 gets to add this, so she's a 10k shield you can guard with immediately. My problem with adding another attacker to this deck is that this deck's front row is quite busy because you have both Anachronus and the other Colossus, the grade 2 that draws you a card, that you always want in the front row because those are the main cards that you are sending to the bind zone from your ODM's attack skill. And if not, then it's usually the order, right? So this isn't really something you want to be sending to the order zone, so it's only really good on turn 3, I guess, when you don't have as many parts yet set up because you haven't done a triple drive yet. But then would you run 3 copies or 4 copies just to see this early? I don't really think so. So I feel like if we do see it played, it might be at like very low counts, and even then I wouldn't really expect it too much. Mushkim is the name of the generic, so his plus 5k condition is if your opponent's grade 3 or greater, and if this turn any card was put by any cards your card's ability from deck to soul, then it gets plus 5k power. And again, there are some Dark States decks that don't put cards from deck to soul, so I don't know, the condition is a little bit limited, so don't feel too much hope from this generic. Then the Amutis is another double rare that says that during your turn, when any player's rearguard is sent to deck or to bind, then this gets grade plus 1 and plus 2k power, so it becomes a grade 2. It does have to be a rearguard that is bound though, so that means that the in-hand ability of the Colossus for the Glauwine Dragon deck will not proc this effect, but the goal is to make her be a grade 2 so you can send 2 grade 2s to your bind zone for that effect. End of battle that she boosted though, if your Vanguard has the Persona Ride icon and is a gear dragon, then you can bind herself to draw 1. So I guess the idea is that you can bind 2 grade 2s for Glauwind, and then that will immediately call out the Colossus, and then this will bind herself on her own to be another card that is treated as a grade 2, I guess, but she's only treated like that on the rearguard circle. She'll be a grade 1 in the bind zone, but at least she will convert into a card, which I think is quite good. And the Birarama I also put in the B tier as well. Basically in drop in your main phase, when a card is bound, you energy blast 3 to call itself out. So this is a grade 3 that you can then immediately bind as well. So again, you can bind a grade 3 and a 1, add up to 4 as well. And in rearguard guardian circle, if your is a gear dragon, this gets plus 5k power, plus 5k shield, which is really not too bad. Grade 3s with shield are always appreciated. So I feel like this will be run just because it's a good target to send to the bind zone from the drop, and also I guess guard with early. This also works even if your Vanguard is a gear dragon that isn't a grade 3, which isn't too bad. Unfortunately, the round line is not gear dragons grade 1s and 2s, so that unfortunately will not be too synergistic. Then in C tier, just 2 cards in here. The Somatage Prodigy is a grade 2 that is basically looking to be Grugio support. During your turn, if your bind zone has a critical in it, then this gets plus 5k power, and then once per turn you can soul blast a grade 1 or greater card, choose a grade 0 from your drop and send it to your soul. I guess this can also technically be Unica support, which that deck has been popping up here and there lately. So again, not sure if it'll be played, but it does have some synergy, so worth mentioning. And then finally, Corina is a rare for Jeweled that says in main phase, when she's called, if your Vanguard is Jeweled Magnus specifically, you choose a card from your soul that is different name from this that is equal to or lower grade than your Vanguard, call it to rear, but end of turn, it will go back to soul. When it boosts, if your Vanguard is Jeweled Magnus specifically, you choose a card from drop and put it to soul, as long as you don't have a card with the same grade as that unit. I think if you're trying to build pure Magnus without Ignis, which, I mean, they literally just reprinted the Jeweled Ignis master deck set recently in Japan, I feel like then it might be worth to try to build this. Like, if you are going to build just Magnus, then this will be a card worth playing, but if you're still playing Ignis, I don't really think it's that worth it because you have the amazing grade 2 from that deck. So overall, Dark States, I think the new ride line is somewhat promising, but overall everything else seems a little disappointing, so I'm going to be a bit more harsh and give a 2 out of 5 for Dark States this time. Moving on to Brandt Gate, and it's another set in a row where Brandt Gate is eating quite well with another very well supported old deck. I guess Weisruger wasn't really that old, but anyway, Prison got its long-awaited new ride line. And of course, Seraph Clearline and that entire ride line are going to be in S. I want to talk about the ride line first, and this deck is expected to be the next best deck potentially, with the sole exception that people hate playing the mirror so much because it's so bad going second that maybe the usage rate might not be as high as something like Bavsagra. Anyway, let's talk about the ride line first and foremost. So of course, we have the new grade 1 that when you ride her, you reveal a Seraph grade 3 in your ride deck. Search your deck for the new Galactalaz, send it to Order Zone directly, and if you search your deck, you shuffle your deck. If you put it from hand, then you draw 1. So that's the huge issue patched up. Until now, that was always the kind of problem with the deck, is that if you opened the prison in your opening hand, your ride line did nothing, and you had to rest your Vanguard to play the prison as well, or rest a card on the field to play the prison, which if you went first, resting the Vanguard was fine, but if you went second, you had to play rearguard to do that as well, so huge buff to just setting up the prison in the first place. The prison itself, I'm not sure if it's an upgrade or a downgrade, it's a bit of an in-between. The effect is the same as before, where when your opponent could normal call a rearguard, they can choose to do one of the following: Soul Boss 1 to free one of the cards in their prison, or Canal Boss 2 to free 2 of them. If you don't know how it works, when you imprison one of your opponent's cards, it goes to your Order Zone, and then they can choose to Soul Boss 1 to free that card, or they can choose to Canal Boss 1 to free 2 cards, and freeing them means they get to call them to rearguard circle. And normally that also means that if they have any auto on-place effects, they get to use those on-place effects. So usually they like to put a card that they can use the on-place effect of in the prison. But there's one more thing that changed about the Galactalaz, which is that when one of your imprisoned cards would be played on your opponent's rearguard circle, if this turn you have not soul charged yet, you may soul charge 1. The old prison allowed you to soul charge 3 when it was played. This one distributes that across turns. So this does make it a little bit harder to use cards that soul blast a bunch, like Muna. It does make your soul overall a little bit tight, but if that's like the only card that soul blasts, then it's not too bad, although of course it is actually not, because the grade 2 of the ride line does ask for a soul 2. The grade 2 now says that when you ride her, if your Order Zone has a prison, Soul Boss 1, reveal a Seraph grade 3 from your ride deck, and then draw 1. That's already a big change. And then your opponent chooses a card from their hand and imprisons it. That also, again, like, just the fact that you still imprison your opponent's hand on turn 2 is already very good because it reduces their defenses. But the fact that you draw a card on top of that is very much a welcome change. But one of the biggest game changers, of course, is the grade 3 herself, Seraph Clearlight. Clearlight says once per turn, you can Soul Boss 1, choose an opponent's rearguard and imprison it. If you did not, your opponent chooses a card from their drop and imprisons it instead. So no matter what, your 1 soul is going to secure you 1 card in the prison, no matter what, even if they don't have a field. And then when she attacks, if you have 3 or more cards in the prison, she'll get plus 10k and plus 1 drive. And at the end of the battle, if she's on rearguard circle, she'll also go to soul to draw you a card. I do think that soul in draw card effect is quite good, but a lot of the lists I've seen in testing don't actually run extra copies, or if they do, it's just 1 or 2 for this effect, or for Persona Ride if you don't find your security upgraders to ride your Pure Light from deck. But overall, the fact that the plus 10k gain happens on rearguard is very much appreciated, although the condition has gone up. In the past, it was 1 card in prison, I think, for plus 10k, and then 3 cards in prison for the extra drive. But then the strongest part of this card is the last effect, that when this card would be soul blasted by your Vanguard's abilities cost until the end of your opponent's next turn, you get the effect that when your opponent would call a unit card from your prison, that called unit's auto effect will not activate, but only during the call. So if they have an auto effect that takes place when they attack, that's okay. If they have an auto effect that takes place when they would end the battle or when they would retire, that's also okay. But if that auto effect says when placed, that will not activate. So this changes certain matchups very drastically, because until now, decks like Eva had a really good matchup into Prison because they go, let me imprison one card from your hand. You give them an Obscudate, and Obscudate says when called by any effect, you get a critical if you have 3 researches in your order zone. So now that effect will simply not activate anymore. And so that is very huge, and I think decks that don't have crazy on-plays auto effects will be the ones benefiting in these matchups. And the fact that it's going to be Soul Blasted not just for Seraph Pure Light, but even for Seraph Clear Light's first effect that's going to work, if you Soul Charge one early, you can technically Soul Blast it for the grade 2 of the ride line, which is also something you can do that I'm not sure if I recommend too much, but it is in the realm of possibility. So overall, this is the biggest upgrade, and that's why it gets to sit in S. Moving to the A tier though, I am going to put the Heldentat in the grade 2. So this is a Welstra support that says when you call it, count +1, look at top 7 for 1 product and 1 different name from this Blitz unit, 1 each, reveal them and add them to your hand and shuffle your deck. CB1 for 2 cards is really good by all means. Like this finding your product, which you can search, you know, from your ride line and whatnot, but the fact that it finds you extra products and also Blitz, which are some of your best rearguards, is very good. On top of that, once per turn has an act effect that if you have a Vanguard that is a Welstra that has a Divine skill, if you didn't play an order yet this turn, you can discard 1 in order to choose a product from your drop, put it to the order zone, and for the rest of that turn, you cannot play any orders. So if you wanted to like hard set one of your orders, then you can't do that. You'd have to use something like one of the effects that just puts them there without being played. I think just for that first effect, this card will definitely see play. Top 7 to not mill out, but to search out 2 cards that you run in spades in your deck is very, very good. Then the Flores Raira, I think the grade 2 that is played for Seraph is also going to see some good play, so I rank her in A as well. She says when she's called, your opponent chooses a card from their drop and imprisons it, and then after that, if they have 2 or more cards in your prison, you make it almost 1 to also draw 1, which is, if you have spare CB, worth to do. You do CB for top 5 call quite a bit, so I think that CB will be split up between that card and this card essentially. She also gets plus 5k shield if you have 1 or more of your opponent's cards in your prison when you're grade 3 or greater, but if you have 3 or more cards in prison, then you will also get plus 5k power on top of another plus 5k to the shield. So she'll be a 15k shield and 15k attacker, which is actually very reminiscent of the first ever prison triple rare from the very first set of the D series. Overall, seems like a good card, nothing too flashy, but good enough that it would be played. I think drop prison is going to continue to be very good because when your opponent doesn't have a field, that'll be how you finish those counts of 3 or 10 once you get to Pure Light. And then I want to give 3 more cards in the A tier for Brandt Gate because I personally do think the Ado Volfront, the support for Impuldio, is also a pretty good card. In the last set, this deck got a restanding rearguard, but doesn't really have too much power. So they released another card that's a double rare that actually kind of solves that issue. So if you have 4 more gauge, his cost goes down by Energy Blast 2. At the end of the ability boosted, if your order zone has a system code exceed, you Energy Blast 2 and retire this to draw 1. So if you have 4 more gauge, then this is just self-retire draw 1, which means that you can send it to gauge afterwards. And then when this is placed by your Impuldio Vanguard's act ability to the gauge, you choose one of your units, and for that turn it gets plus 5k for the turn. And if you have 2 or more cards of the same name in your gauge, you can choose 2 of your units instead of 1. So this power distribution I think is quite good and something that you can really build up on every single turn. So it just kind of like has good synergy with the restanding rearguard from the last set. So I do think Impuldio just keeps picking up little bits and bobs of support that do kind of push it further and further to be a decent deck. And then we have 2 hero cards in this set and they're both very good. First, we have a rearguard grade 2 that is the Combinate Nihia. When she's put from order zone to rear or guardian circle, Soul Blast 2 to draw a card, which is very good because you can put them on both circles from your base effects, but Soul Blast 2 to draw a card defensively is very, very strong because it gives you that extra shield value to survive sometimes. And during your turn, if you have 2 or more bases, she gets plus 5k, but if you have 3 or more, gets another plus 5k. So 20k attacker by base default, which is also very nice. And if you have a base, gets plus 5k shield too. So it's also 10k shield that you can guard with all the time and also draws you a card. So overall, just Not anything too flashy, but very good effects all across the board. And then Heroes also got a new grade 2, but it's actually a grade 2 to play in the ride line. I really wish they would do this more often. She says once per turn on Vanguard Circle, you discard one from hand and reveal a hero grade 3 from your ride deck, and then search your deck for a base and a hero card, one of each. The revealed base card goes to your hand, and the other card you revealed gets scouted to your base, and you shuffle your deck. So this sets up something you can call out later down the line. Deck thins for 2 cards, by the way, and also gives you another base to set on top of that. Generally think that both these cards are very, very good for Brandt Gate, and specifically for, of course, the hero deck, which has been also picking up little scraps of support here and there every so often. In the B tier, there are just a couple cards. First, we have the Transhan Oren. So this is a prison card that I don't really think is going to be played too much. She says when she's called, if your order zone has a prison, look at top 7 for a Seraph card, reveal add it to your hand and shuffle your deck. If you added, then you choose a card from your hand, discard one. But when she boosts, if your Vanguard is grade 3 or greater and you have 2 or more of your opponent's cards imprisoned in your prison, this gets plus 5k. I don't think this is very good because 1, you take out your Seraph Pure Lights from deck with your security upgrader, and 2, you don't really run that many clear lights in the first place, and the fact that you have to discard 1 if you add just doesn't really sound that good either. Like, this doesn't sound better than security upgraders, so I don't really see a reason to run it, personally speaking, even with the 5k buff. And then Inflation Deflector is also another card that, again, is just the generic double rare in this set. The condition for Brandt Gate is quite easy. If any card has been sent to your order zone, any player's card has been sent to order zone, gets plus 5k, so works in prison even. Does not work in Messiah, I guess, but that's about it. But again, I don't really know if the defensive effect is gonna be that appreciated in this deck, so it's maybe good to pick up, but I wouldn't really say or like stress about it too much. And then a couple cards in C that, you know, they're decent, but I don't think they're gonna see any play. The Warning Calgary is one of them. This is a rare for prison, a grade 3 that when called, counterblast 1, chooses up to 2 of your opponent's rear guards and imprisons them. And then if you have 3 more cards in the prison, she gets plus 5k for the turn. Again, you don't want to be spending CB on this. You'd rather spend it on the draw or on the top 5 call. And the last card is the Fayfil. So she's another support for Wellstra. When you call her, look at top 3 for a product card, reveal it to your hand, and put the rest at the bottom of your deck. Top 3 is very low. You are not hitting this. And when she attacks, if this turn your grade 3 or greater product has been operated for that battle, she gets plus 5k. I guess a 15k, but she's not even a blitz, so she's not even like a target for your search. So I feel like if at least she was a blitz, that would have kind of made things a little bit better. So overall, while there were a few meh cards here and there, I do think that overall the quality for Brandt Gate this set is again very, very good. The hero support, the prison support, the, Impodio support even, everything seems very, very good overall. So I'm honestly gonna give a 4 to 5 just because I do think that one of the double rares for prison is quite disappointing. The top 7 is really not that great. And also the rares and below leave a lot to be desired. Literally the only good card that is a rare is the new ride line for heroes, and the only good commons are essentially just the prison related cards. Up next we have Keter, one of the other pretty good winners from the set as well, I'd say, and half of that is basically Youthberg. Starting us off in S is also going to be a Youthberg card that I believe is very good in Ed Invade. This guy is a grade 2 that says when called, if your Vanguard is a youth, which means that the grade 2s are also okay, counter muscle and look at top 7, choose up to 1, reveal it, and do the following based on what it is. If the card you revealed is a Youthberg, you can add it to your hand. If the card you revealed is different name from this, but grade equal to a lower unit card than your Vanguard, you can call it an empty rearguard circle. On top of that, once per turn when it attacks, you soul blast 1, and for every Youthberg on your Vanguard and Bind Zone combined, it gets plus 5k for the turn. That first effect is honestly what makes this so good, because this basically finally gave Youth not just something else to do on turn 2 without necessarily relying on Tithfault and having an order, but top 7 is a very, very broad search. So this means you can get personas, you can also of course find your revolve forms, but you're usually finding those from other cards in the first place. But this also means that just making boards is so much easier. This can connect you into a Sergaon, this can connect you into the Zero that is run in JP, and overall it's just a really good board starter, and it also works when placed on rear and that's it. So it can be placed from anywhere at the same time, so even if you free it from the prison, then it'll also actually fire too. The plus 5k again is also very good because it, on turn 3 he'll get plus 5k, on turn 4 he'll get plus 10k, and it's gonna kind of basically just stack. You always send the card to the bind zone at the end of the turn, so that means that, no matter when you choose to resolve this, it's still gonna work. So it's a good target also for the restand off of the exist, which I think is also very well synergized. So maybe I'm gassing it up too much, but I do think this card is worthy of S. In A tier, we do have the new Soil. This is a Rezel Rezael support that says if your Vanguard's a Rezael, this gets plus 5k on both players' turns. And when this boosts your Rezael Vanguard, you may countercharge 1. If you did at the end of the turn, this goes to the soul. Pretty good. And in the soul line on Rearguard Circle, when your Rezael grade 3 or greater unit is attacked, you can bind this from there and choose the attack unit, give it plus 5k for the battle. But if you have 2 or more of the same name card as this in the bind zone, you give it another plus 5k. So it goes from being a 5k shield to a 10k shield per copy. So you essentially get to be a 5k shield twice and a 10k shield twice if you play 4 of this in your deck. Overall, I do think this is a good card because countercharge is a very, very welcome addition to the deck, of course. And soul provision is also good even if you are just using it for its own effect when it's in the soul. But you know, 13k booster, countercharger, plus like, you know, 10 to 15k shield, or sorry, 5 to 10k shield is also pretty good. The fact that you can also technically guard with this, and there are some cards that you can send a card from drop to soul, which is nice, but you can guard with this, revive it from the Rezael, boost with it, countercharge with it, although it does have to boost the Vanguard, so that would have to happen the next turn, but then it goes to soul and then the next turn you can use it defensively is pretty good. So I do think soul deserves a somewhat high rating of A tier. Then the Berserten, I think, is also quite good. This guy is in drop when you ride a Youthberg in the ride phase. If you don't have him on the field, you can soul boss 1 to call him from drop. And when your Vanguard is a Youthberg grade 3 or greater, he gets plus 5k power, plus 5k shield. And if you have a Youthberg in your bind zone, gets another plus 5k power. So 20k attacker on base, 15 to 20. And then also at the same time revivable, which is a very good resource. It's very specifically only when you ride a Youthberg, so Revolve form will not proc this, because if it did, you'd be able to do 6 attacks per turn starting from turn 3, which is a little bit too much. So it's very specifically when you are placing a Youthberg in the ride phase. Does not activate any time other than that. And then the Avar I'm also putting in A tier. This has the Alden support and it's very good. A grade 2 that says if your Vanguard's an Alden, gets plus 5k and boost. So 15k booster is also very nice, but also 15k attacker. End of the battle, boosted or attacked, you can reveal a Alden from your ride deck, or if your Vanguard is Alden, you retire, sorry, you don't retire him, you send him to soul. It's even better. And you look at the top 5 for a non-Regulus piece, grade 3, reveal it out to your hand and shuffle your deck. So this can be a turn 2 attacker that can actually become a Persona Ride copy. It can also become the lady that you use in this deck that, you know, when you overcall her, she gets to proc her effects and whatnot. So overall, very good card. Like, this actually does so many good things that I feel like Alden needs to be reconsidered at this point. And the one more card I was really debating between B or A is Serivant. This is the grade 2 for Liel Draconis, and I don't really think it's that great, but it does have some cool interactions, so I think it might still be decent and it will be played. And Draconis is a fairly popular deck, so you are going to see it. So she says, when this card is bound by your Liel Vanguard's ability during your turn, soul boss 1, call this to back row, rearguard circle, end of the turn, bind it. And if your Vanguard's a Liel grade 3 or greater, this gets boost as well. So what this means is that you can essentially ditch this for ride deck early, or ditch this for Liel's effect as well. And then when you would bind something, if she was already in your drop for Liel's effect in the main phase, she can soul boss 1, call herself out anywhere in the back row. So you can even promote her and attack with her if that's in the main phase. So that means that if your Liel would attack, you can also bind her immediately and then soul boss 1 to call her to the back row, and then she will boost whatever you call newly from the Liel too. You can also theoretically call her behind Vanguard, boost with the first attack and bind something else, use your divine skill, and then on the divine turn, bind the Vanguard booster that is resting, which is her, and then you'll be able to soul boss 1 to call her out behind whatever is going to attack next. So that free-form use of this card I think is very good. It costing a soul each time does mean that we're basically forced to run the sequence wizard again, because that not just calls stuff from top 5 but also helps us generate soul, and I think soul fronts are looking to stay in this deck as well. And I think especially in English where you are missing important promos, this card is even more going to be sought after. So while I was really hoping that they would give the deck something to do on turn 2 because it's severely lacking that, or some form of power gain because it's also lacking that, at least on the Vanguard, or like outside of things like that don't gain power on their own. We didn't get that, but we got a very flexible new piece that I do think is going to see some play. So for that reason, she's an A tier. Then in the B tier, I just have 2 cards. The generic grade 2, Logistila. This guy's plus 5k gain function or condition is if you have 3 or more rearguards placed this turn. Not sure if every deck is going to be doing that either, so it might be a bit of a tough condition. And I'll also put the Drive Out Dragon in here as well, the Rezael support, because I do think it might see play as a 1-of, but I do wish it was a grade 1 instead of grade 2. He also looks like Firewall Dragon from Yu-Gi-Oh! A little bit. If your Vanguard is a Rezael, he gets the following effects. During your turn, get plus 5k, and if your Vanguard ability plays this from drop to rear this turn, he gets another 5k, so 20k attacker. End of the battle, Energy Blast 3, put this to Soul, choose a original Rezael from your Soul or drop, and add it to your hand. If you chose from Soul, you may Soul Charge 1. So this is kind of meant to, like, after your Vanguard attacks, you can get back the original Rezael to your hand to have cost for Vita again next turn. That does decrease the power of your Vita swing next turn, I guess, but it's not necessarily the worst. And I guess in case you run out of personas and you want to go back to the original Rezael like Akina did in the anime, then this is also technically a card for that. But I really don't see this being played more than like a 1-of, because I feel like your energy is also quite tight in this deck. So I don't know. I'm not too convinced by it personally. And then in C tier, I actually have 4 cards, surprisingly. Silver Mane Stallion, I think, is a funny little card. A grade 1 that in the back row says when your Vanguard Revolt dresses, you Soul Boss 1 to stand this, and end of the turn it retires. So because your Exist stands your front row rear guard, this lets you have a restanding booster. And I like the idea of a Youthberg horse. It kind of brings me back to the old Alfred days. Then the Eddie Says is another card I'll put in C tier. This is a end of battle if your Vanguard's a Rezael, Soul Boss 1, retire this. Look at top 5 for a Rezael card and add it to your hand. So this is like a worse Cadwalla, but if you're on a budget, this could be something to run as a replacement. But the fact that you can only find Rezaels is quite disappointing, and only from top 5 as well. At least let it be Gabwelius as well, like the Liel Searchers. Then Riens, I'll also include in here. This is a grade 1. When placed, your Vanguard's an Olden, lets you discard 1 to choose a card that is a grade 3 non-Regulus that is this different name from your Vanguard from your drop, and be able to add it back to your hand. So this gets back just specifically orders or the grade 3 supporting rearguard for Olden as well. And the last card is the Trapezium based Sorceress. So she herself is a grade 2 that when you call her from hand, you can almost 1 to call the specific grade 1 from your drop in the same column behind her, and when she's boosted by her and attacks, if your 1 is grade 3 or greater, she gets plus 5k for the turn. But the grade 1 says that when she boosts that grade 2, she gets plus 5k for the battle, so they make a 28k column on their own. And if your Vanguard is a Sorceress, then this lets you look at the top card of your deck and put it to top of deck or to Soul. It's not a bad 2-card combo. Even generically, this has a bit of a function, but it's only just about as good as just being mentioned. I don't think a lot of decks are going to be cutting space just to play this engine. Overall, I do think Keter is above average. Youthberg got really good support, Alden got really good support, Liel got decent support, Rezael got relatively good support, I'd say, as well. So kind of adds up to something along the lines of maybe 3 out of 5. It's pretty average. Maybe Brandt could have been a 5 out of 5 and this could have been a 4 out of 5, but we're going to go with a 3 to 5. It's kind of close to that Jiva department. And in terms of old decks getting support, it's also pretty similar quality in terms of Dragon Empire as well. We do now move on to Stoicheia, but don't worry, I will go over the Freeran stuff after we're done with Stoicheia and Lyrical, because that is part of Keter, but I do want to kind of set aside from the main stuff first. For Stoicheia, there is of course an S tier, and that is of course Leonorn and her entire new ride line. The new ride line, if you haven't kept up, the new grade 1 Gracia says, when ridden over the new Corfi, when ridden over the new Corfi, you get to reveal your Leonorn Traumerend from your ride deck to call a plant token to rear, so it does exactly what you hope it to do. You don't have to run the Rotowa ride line anymore. The grade 2 Rectina says, when you ride a Leonorn grade 3 over her, she chooses your Vanguard, and for that turn, its auto effect, a Cannon Blast, becomes 1 less. So that means that even if it's the old Leonorn, that CB1 draw 1 call 1 now is just draw 1 call 1, which is also nice. But of course we do have a new grade 3 in Leonorn Troimend. So she has the Unison Dress ability, which means that as long as she's in the Vanguard circle, she's in the Unison Dress state, which was exclusive to Vivace until now. And she says that all of your Leonorn rearguards also gain boost and grade -2, so they're treated as grade 1s. So this means that for any of your support cards that say if you have 2 or more grade 1 or lower cards in the back row to activate an effect, that will also be okay now. And when she attacks when not being boosted, you can choose all of your units that have boost in your back row and stand them and boost her with them. If you boost it with 3 or more, you can almost 1 Energy Blast 2, so the red line makes that Cannon Blast non-existent for the first use of this effect. and for that turn, she will get +1 drive, and at the end of the battle, choose one of the following effects. The first one is to restand 2 of your back row rearguards, like the old grade 3 Leonore. The second one is, if your opponent's Vanguard's grade 3 or greater, you choose a rearguard, you stand it and the Vanguard, and they both get +10k power and lose 3 drives. So the Vanguard loses its drives, but if you choose a Leonore from your rear or hand and put it to the soul, you get a drive back on her. There's a lot to unpack with this card. First things first, the Leonorns being able to boost is huge, because that also means that that last effect can now just use them from rear as boosters into the soul, and also just means that it's harder to break with this deck as well. Even if you run you know, Vivaces and you have too many in hand or something and you're kind of bricking, well, now you can set up the boosters too. The fact that this has 2 different modes between going first or second is also very nice. Even if you go first, and you know, until now Leonore would just swing Vanguard, restand 2 back row, and then swing with them, right, for 3 attacks. Now going first, you're still doing 3 attacks, but you can change up the pattern because of the fact that she stands everything that has boost first before boosting with them. So you can swing with a column and then swing with Leonore, and she will restand the resting booster in the back row and then boost with it too, which is a change. And then that way, your attack pattern doesn't have to be Vanguard first. You can attack rearguard first to pressure a damage first, so that the triple drive has more pressure to it as well. So this part is also a huge upgrade for Leonore too. But more than anything, it's that last effect, of course, being able to restand herself and the rearguard on turn 3 going second is huge. She's going to attack with 23k power just on her own, but keep in mind that this deck can set back row rearguards to 20k power and has rearguards that can copy back row rearguards power and add it to themselves. You can stack triggers on those and they will be huge attackers like the Rosarium Fairy. And there's one more card in this set that they added for some mysterious reason, which is literally grade 2 Rosarium Fairy, which of course will also be in S. It is the Morwar. I don't know why they made this card personally. I think it's pretty crazy. We'll talk about the second effect first. When this attacks, if your Vanguard is in the unison dress state, if your opponent's Vanguard's grade 3 or greater, choose a back row rearguard. For that battle, this unit gains power equal to that unit's power. There you go. Free plus 20k no matter what. If you put any triggers on it, 30, 40, 50, God knows. So literally you got a second Rosarium Fairy. Congratulations. She's now literally can hit for insane numbers, 60k plus, multiple times a turn. I mean, until now you could do that too, but you had to draw 2 Rosariums. Now you can have 1 Rosarium and 1 Morwar, and you're good as well. Morwar has one more effect, that when you would call it to rear, you can reveal a Unison Dress ability possessing card from your hand. If you did, or if your Vanguard has Unison Dress, counterblast 1, draw 1, and you may also soul blast 1 to call a plant token. So you do have to have it in your hand, which means that it's not from right deck, so do be careful with that. But, you know, drawing 1 and then calling a plant token is like, I mean, this is basically even better than Rosarium, because Rosarium popped one of your rearguards to call 2 plant tokens, but this gets you a draw and a plant token, and it's also a Rosarium. Just insane. I do think that this also makes like I'm very much the winner of this set too. So overall, I expect like Leonore to be one of the best decks in this set. I do think Prison does check a lot of matchups. I don't know how much it checks the Leonore matchup, because technically there is countercharge in this deck built in as well. Anyway, in the A tier, we have Remains Smashing. I wasn't sure if this is an S or an A. It's actually a very good card for Zorga in my opinion. So it's a grade 2 with 8k power with an effect in hand and drop. When your Zorga that has a divine skill that is a Vanguard attacks, if you don't have this guy on the board already, counterblast 1 and retire one of your rear guards, call him to rear, and for every different normal order in your bind zone, this gets plus 5k for the turn. So this can easily add up as the game scales on into, you know, being 18, 28, 38, 48, etc. And at the end of the ability attack the Vanguard, you can almost want to retire him, so the CV does that up a little bit here. That's the only reason why I didn't put it in S. And you choose a non-Regulus normal order from your bind zone added back to your hand. So things that you've alchemagicked away can get back to your hand. You know, this doesn't add blitz orders. It would have been kind of crazy if it did, but it does let you reuse anything that you thought you might not need anymore, which until now wasn't necessarily as much of an option. So I do think that the card itself is very good. I mean, it gives this deck a 4th attack at all times / a 5th attack, you know, combined with a divine skill. And on top of that, it's also giving you a bit of access to your orders and even more toolbox ability, which I think is one of the major strengths of Zorga too. Again, I'm not a Zorga expert. I don't really enjoy playing the deck, but it's actually had a top in an unofficial tournament last weekend after the ban list was implemented, so with this new card it might be even better. The next A tier cards are the 2 cards for Nanaclear. There are both double rares, I believe. One of them is the Bernoa, so she's a grade 3 that says if your world is a stray garden, which if you have 3 of the Paradise cards, which she is also is activated, so 18k on her own. When she attacks, she does the following. During this turn, if she was stood by your non-nuclear grade 3 or greater's Vanguard's ability, if she hasn't gained a crit other than by trigger effects, then for that battle you can give her a crit, but at the end of that battle she will go to Soul. That's very good, because she says that if your world is a Stray Garden, you can also Soul Blast the card with the same name as your Vanguard for her to get plus 10k as well. So all of this is on attack. She'll be a 28k attacker on her own that is also going to gain a crit. And don't forget that there are plenty of ways to distribute power in this deck too. So this is a very strong addition to the deck that just adds even more cards with the Paradise archetype as well. The second card is the grade 1, the Flarus. In drop, if you don't have her on the board, she doesn't cost soul to use, but in your ride phase, when you would ride an Unclear, you can soul boss 1 to call her. So from the drop, she revives herself, but this can be free if you don't have her on the board. So it's basically like Maple. And when she boosts, if your world is a Stray Garden, she chooses a unit, gives a 5k for the turn. And if you did at the end of the turn, this retires. So, but you can call it back next turn, so that's not really much of a big deal. This works quite well with the new grade 3 as well, because you can buff that and it's going to be restanding with a crit and its own power, the plus 10k from, of course, the Soul Blasting your Vanguard part of the effect. So overall, I do think Unclear got some pretty good double rares. Surprised no triple rare support this set. I did think this deck was pretty important for this season, so I'm kind of surprised that it didn't get anything else. But I do think these two cards do push it up a little bit. Not necessarily like competitive tournament ready levels, but good enough to bring to locals / to less major events than BCS / WGP. Then in B tier, we have Council Urtis. This is a Levidrus support. It's a rare with this much of a text box. When you call it, you reveal Levidrus from your right deck, or if your Vanguard is Levidrus, count must 1 to draw 1 and discard the top card of your deck. And if he is attacking a grade 3 or greater while on a Infinity Eyes marker, for that turn gets plus 5k power, and then you may Soul Blast 2 to choose an opponent's regard, and until the end of your opponent's next turn, it cannot intercept and does not stand in the next stand phase. It's a bit of an alternate addition to Stoicheia compared to what it's had until now. CB1, draw 1, discard 1 is nice, but I do feel like you do use your CB on a lot of Revive and also Foxil, as well as the Dual Nation card in this deck, so I'm not sure if you have the CB for this as much. And Soul Blast 2 is also a little bit heavy as well, given that you are Soul Blasting for other costs as well. I think if this card came out right when Shamanite got restricted, it would have been really, really good, but because it's coming out after Shamanite came back, that is also another card that's using up your soul and also is a very important piece to have on the board. So whether this will see play or not, I'm not sure, but I think there is a world where it does. You can play a bit more of like a long game focused Levidrus, which it already is, of course, but I don't think this one card will bring Levidrus back to the glory that it was 1 year ago. Then of course we have the double rare Brave Shooter. This condition for Stoicheia this time is if you send an order card to drop. It's actually basically almost every Stoicheia deck plays orders, I guess, so this actually is a very generic condition, so not too bad. And then the Humidity is specifically for the Leonorn Troyment decks. So in drop, when your Leonorn Troyment is ridden on Vanguard Circle, if you don't have her on the field, you can call her from the drop to rear. End of your turn, if your Vanguard is Leonorn Troyment, then she goes to Soul. I think if you're running Vivace and stuff, you're better off running a lot of the older cards. I mean, you have a grade 1 that revives stuff, you have a grade 1 that draws in counter charges. Like, there's a lot of really good grade 1s in Leonorn, so I don't really think this is good enough to be played personally. And then for the C tier cards, just some little shout outs here basically. Donora is a grade 1 for Levidrus that says that during your turn, when this card is put by your card ability to Soul, if your Vanguard is a Levidrus grade 3 or greater, counter charge 1 or energy charge 3. Blast would be weird, but counter charge, pretty good. Appreciated just because there are a bit more counterblasting cards if you include the new guy. But that being said, you do want to just be putting Levidrus to your soul all the time, so I'm not really sure if this will be seeing that much play either. And then another shout out to Lithania. When people say Lithuania, sometimes they say Lithuania, so this almost sounds like it a little bit. When your other unit attacks, if it's the 5th battle of this turn, you can put this to soul. For that battle, your opponent cannot play Blitz orders. So combined with another form of guard restrict is actually pretty good. Shout outs to Flagbearer Dragon for not getting a ride line upgrade for how many years has it been now? Like 4? But anyway, with that, we conclude the Stoicheia part. This one is a 5 out of 5. I do think Leonorn, not just really good support overall, but also like good Zorga support, pretty good support also for Nana Clear, and some interesting cards for Levy Dress. So I personally speaking do think that they really went all out for Stoicheia this set. And finally, before Freerin, we have Lyrical. This time I'm willing to put a couple cards in S as well, and it is going to be the Arumeru. This card is support for Chris Rain, not Chris Rain herself, but it reads like a custom card a little bit. When you call her, you may soul charge one, and then if your Vanguard's a Chris Rain grade 3 or greater, you choose a unit, give it plus 5k for the turn. It can be anything. Then you make Counterblast 1 to draw one, and she gets 5k as well. So that's already pretty decent, especially in a deck that can have a restanding rearguard. And once per turn, if your Vanguard's a Chris Rain grade 3 or greater, and this turn you've played an order, which synergizes very well with her promo, you may Energy Blast 3, choose a grade 1 from your drop that is in the Sentinel. If you don't have her on your rearguard circle, you can call it to rear. So this one card gives you soul, gives you power to a unit, gives you power to herself, gets you a draw, and also revives a grade 1 that you don't have on board. In my opinion, that's a lot of strong points, and it synergizes very well with High Five. If you don't know, High Five is a grade 2 order that was a promo that works specifically with the divine skill, like, you know, fated ones. You can play it from drop, Counterblast 1 to play it. If your Vanguard has a divine skill, then it doesn't cost Counterblast, which is crazy. You bind it, draw one, choose a card from hand, reveal it. If it's the same or lower grade than your Vanguard, you call it. If it's not, you discard it. If you call to rear, then if your Vanguard is grade 3 or greater for that turn, the called units gets the effect that it gets plus 5k, and when it would leave the rearguard circle by being bounced or overcalled or anything, you can choose one of your units to give it plus 5k for the turn. So you get to even just call herself out basically, and then she will call out more things from drop too. So Arumeru is like crazy. She's so damn good. The other card I kind of like rate pretty highly myself is the Cresciel. This is a grade 1 for Artisaria, another piece of support for Artisaria. When you call her from hand, if your right deck has Artisaria, you can reveal it, or if your Vanguard is Artisaria, Counterblast 1 to draw a card. And when she boosts, if your Artisan has a sound system, she gets plus 5k, and if she's boosting your Artisaria Vanguard, during that battle she gets another plus 2k, so Artisaria's 15k booster. Then you can Soul Blast 1, choose one of your rearguards, and give it the effect for the turn that when this would be retired from rearguard circle, it goes back to your hand. This means that whatever you would overcall with Artisaria's token call effect will go back to your hand, so it makes it a lot easier to call down anything really, because it's going to come back. You get to reuse your on-place effects, which is also very strong. Makes future support even better as well, because that means you can reuse those effects too. And the fact that this draws a card when you have CB extra to spare, and also in the early game especially, is really good, because this can connect you to some of your early game pieces to make more offensive, aggressive turns. So these two, in my opinion, deserve S ratings. I think they're both very, very good. In A tier, we'll put Chris Rain. She didn't get a whole new ride line, she just got a new form in Cadenza, not Cadenza Eve though. So they changed her effect a little bit. She now says once per turn, Counterblast 1, choose any number of your units, and then choose one of the following effects. If you chose 4 or more different named, or if you chose 4 or more, they all have different names, then you can choose 2 effects instead of 1. And if you chose 5 or more and they all have different names, instead of choosing 1, you get to choose all of them. So they let you draw 1 energy charge 3, let you choose a unit, give it 15k for the turn. That's going to be herself, it's going to be one of your rearguards, whatever. And for that turn, she will get a crit, and you can choose one of your rearguards, and for that turn, it gets the effect that at the end of the turn, this goes back to your hand. So that bounce effect is new. That is also going to be letting you reuse a lot of your very powerful effects, like the Outer Emitter as well. And her divine skill is also not too different, but there is a small change. She says when she attacked a grade 3 or greater at the end of that battle, Soul Blast 1, choose any number of your rearguards and return them to your hand, and then choose one card from your hand that is a unit card and call it. For that turn, it inherits the power and critical of your Vanguard. So in the past, I'm pretty sure it was bounce everything and then call once. Now you can choose to not bounce everything. It literally makes the deck smoother and more easy to play. So just those upgrades I do think are very good. I don't think they're insane enough to be S tier. I do think Arumeru is what makes this deck very good and adds more consistency to it. But, you know, Chris Rain's been getting good support throughout the last few sets. I mean, it is a deck that was introduced last year together with Rezael, right? But Chris Rain has more support than Varka right now, if anything. So Chris Rain gets an A, doing definitely very good. Then the Sroine is the Juicy Fruity support, also in A tier. When she attacks a grade 3 or greater, if your Vanguard is a Juicy Fruity, then she gets plus 5k for the battle. But when she is retired from a rearguard circle that a plant token or a token unit, sorry, is now on, if your Vanguard is a Juicy Fruity grade 3 or greater, she goes to Soul, draws a card, energy plus 3, and then gives that token unit plus 10k. It's really not too bad. So you're basically setting her up early no matter what, and then when you call the plant token, then you know this will basically give you a card draw, a soul, and also power up that plant token, giving you scaling into defensives as well. And then in the B tier, we do have a few cards. One of them is the Menadiel. This is the generic of the set. The condition for Lyrical is if your opponent's grade 3 or greater, and if this turn a unit has been placed by a card ability. That does sound pretty generic for Lyrical, actually. Then the Flinda will go here as well. She's actually drawn by Coral's artist, which looks very nice. When you call her, count +1, look at top 5 for a Marilane and reveal it to your hand. If you did not, countercharge 1, so at least it refunds it. And when your unit is placed in the same column as this unit by your Marilane grade 3 or greater's Vanguard's effect, then if you persona row this turn, she also stands herself too. So Marilane basically calls out something else with her on attack effect, and then this allows you to have a full restood column. It's not necessarily too crazy because it requires persona, right? So you're going first, turn 3 isn't necessarily going too crazy even with this. So it's a welcome change, but not necessarily something that's like too crazy. And then the Marilise is a support for Chris Rain as well. So when she's discarded from hand, she goes to Soul, and in Soul, during your ride phase, when your Chris Rain would be ridden on your Vanguard circle, if you don't have her on the rearguard circle, you can energy plus 3 to call her out from your Soul to rearguard circle. So a grade 1 that you can just pop out, and then that helps to contribute to the names, right? Just really nice that even if she's discarded early, she goes to Soul 2, and then you can use her to pay for Soul Blast costs, and then if you have extras, then you can call one out, right? So I don't really see a reason not to play multiples of these because they'll rarely be on board. And you can just discard them during your turn for ride costs or for whatever other costs really, and then you'll be able to fill them up in the soul to use for costs. And you do have some pretty heavy soul blast costs in this deck as well. Just a couple C tier mentions. One of them is Ratul. She is a grade 1 that when you call her, if you have a token unit on a rearguard circle, then you can soul charge 1, and if your Vanguard is a Juicy Fruity, then choose a token unit and give it plus 5k for the turn. So I guess just a little buff, might get played in Juicy Fruity just because it doesn't have that much support just yet, but thought it'd be worth mentioning. And the Rumming is the last one, a grade 1 that at the end of battle it boosted a token. You can put her to Soul to choose the unit, give it plus 5k for the turn. Simple effect, but build up Soul that I'm not sure how much that deck wants. I haven't really been testing it myself. I don't think I even own the cards, but helping to power up units, it can even be your Vanguard, I think is pretty good, so worth mentioning as well. With that, I do think I did leave out a lot of stuff for Lyrical, so I'm not going to give it the highest of ratings, but all the triple rares are very good, and also the double rares are quite decent as well, so I think it gets a 4 to 5. It's overall quite good. And finally, the bonus collab part of the set is the free run stuff in Keter. So it's actually quite interesting. Also, an important mention, there is a DSR in this set, which is the Liel Draconis. Very good choice of a DSR. This is also very beautiful art as well. And there is also, of course, the usual secret rares for the set. Of course, I think people are expecting the best ones of the set to be the Chris Rain together with the Seraph and the Leonorn. So the ladies tend to be popular, but the free ring collab definitely came out of nowhere, but the decks actually look pretty decent and quite interesting too. So there's 3 ride lines, Farron, Freerin, and Stark, and I'll kind of go over them as I give you my ratings as well. So in S, I'm going to rate the Tithfold reprint in S tier first and foremost. So this is a grade 2 free run, and her first line of text says, this card is treated as Tithfold, not also as Tithfold, only as Tithfold. And there are some cards in this collab that say search for a free renamed card. This will not be treated as a free renamed card because she's treated as Tithfold, not also as Tithfold. Very important. But doing reprints like this is very smart. I think if you're going to be doing collabs every set, you might as well use that, you know, space in the set to also reprint some very important cards. And especially if it's a good pull rate, then that's even better. By the time this video goes up, you'll know if the pull rate is good or not. But at the time of recording, it is the night before the set releases. So unfortunately, I don't. The other card that I'll put in S for this collab is the grade 2 Stark. So he says if you have a free run race of Vanguard, this gets the following effects. That if your Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, he gets plus 5k power, plus 5k shield during both players' turns. In drop, when you play a normal order, all of these decks play normal orders every turn. Then if you don't have a rearguard with the same name as him, you can call him from drop to rear for free. And at the end of the attack that he battled, if it was the first attack of this battle phase and your Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, you Soul Blast 2 to stand him. So this is a generic restanding rearguard that is also a combined rusher, that is also 10k shield and a 15k attacker in all of the free run decks. And I feel like just because of that, he will be an auto inclusion as well, because for some decks, that's the only way to do multi-attacks in their entire archetypes as well. In A tier is basically all of the ride lines. So I'll first go over Free Run's ride line. So she uses the Hymn Mill as the ride line. The grade 1 says that when you ride him over the grade 0 Hymn Mill, he reveals the free run grade 3 from your ride deck to put the silly fun travel token into your order zone. This token is a grade 1 that says you can only have this card and other grimoire cards in your order zone and nothing else. In order zone once per turn, when this is put to the order zone, or when your free run Vanguard is placed, you can search your deck or drop for a grimoire card and put it to order zone. If you search your deck, shuffle your deck. The grimoires are all orders that you can only play one copy of in a deck, by the way. Second effect is once per turn in the order zone. This turn, when your free run normal unit would be placed on rearguard circle. If it's not the battle phase, you can search your deck or drop for a grimoire card, put it to order zone, and if you search your deck, shuffle your deck. So basically every turn that you ride and also, you know, call something, you get to search for 2 orders, which is very good. So this is not a grimoire itself, but basically keep in mind that every turn you can accelerate out 2 things. So, you know, in that fashion, the grade 2 Hymn Mill and Free Run has Free Run in the name, so that will proc the effect when the Vanguard is placed. Says when you're ridden over by the grade 3 free run, you look at top 7 to find a free run race non-sentinel normal unit and add it to your hand. So this is pretty generic, which is pretty nice. And the grade 3 free run says you cannot 1 and you choose effects based on how many different grimoires you have in your order zone. If you have 3 or more, you draw 1. If you have 5 or more, for that turn, she gets the effect that gives plus 5k to all front row units. And if you have 7 or more different ones, then she gets an extra drive. And then once per turn, you can energy blast as much as you want. For every energy used for this effect, you choose that many different grimoires in your order zone, and if they're all different names, you activate all of their auto effects. So now you're probably curious, what are those auto effects? So I'm just gonna go in order of how they appear. So this one, again, all of them say you can only play 1 in the deck. This one says you can only play this if your Vanguard is a free run. Energy blast 2 to play it. When sent to order zone, put a card from drop to soul. Only really good if you're gonna be, you know, needing soul for something. This one is Energy blast 2 to play it. If it's put to your order zone, you look at the top card of your deck, put it on top or bottom of the deck. So this helps you to confirm your triple drive to be of good quality. This one says, they all cost Energy blast 2 to play, so I'll just skip that part. When sent to order zone, you call a plant token to rearguard circle. That's quite good. You want to be doing that as much as possible. This one says, when put to order zone, you choose a trigger from your drop that isn't a heal or a over trigger and shuffle it back into your deck. So every turn you can return a crit or a draw or a front. That's actually not too bad. This one says, when put to order zone, you can choose a circle and put all of it face up and stand it. So this is a countercharger actually, or if you got paralyzed for some reason, it also restands your stuff. This one says that when put to order zone, draw a card. We like that. We want to play this as early as possible. This one says when put to order zone, you choose a card from your damage zone and heal it. If you did, put the top card of your deck into your damage face down. But if the card you healed was face up, then you put the card from top of deck face up as well. So you might be wondering, why would I want to heal? Well, that is basically because all of these orders are one-ofs. So if one of them gets stuck, you need to put it to the drop so you can send it into the order zone after that. And then this one says that when it's put to order zone, you choose a card from hand, discard it. If you did, you choose a non-sentinel grade 2 or lower normal unit from drop or a non-regulus order card and add it to your hand. This lets you reuse your Tiffault, I guess, and whatever other Keter cards you're running as well. It doesn't specify free run, which is pretty good. So all of those are grimoires, and if you've been counting, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So of the 8, you need 7 different ones for the triple drive. But then she has her own order that isn't a grimoire, so keep that in mind. You play this for Energy Blast 2 as well, but only if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater. And it says choose a column and retire all opponent's rearguards in that column. Choose your Vanguard. For that turn, it gets the effect that all of your front row units get plus 5k and plus 1 crit. So this basically buffs the Stark that's restanding, but also gives a crit to your triple driving Vanguard that is also 23k base even without Persona Ride. So overall, this deck does seem pretty decent, like being able to especially reuse effects like call plant token, draw a card, return a trigger, like revive a grade 2 or lower, all sound pretty good to me. So being able to essentially, you know, reuse those effects every turn while also being able to draw a card and do, you know, triple drive at every turn with a plus 10k buff to front row without persona is pretty good. So that's an A. Then in the Fern deck, let's go over that one next. That's also an A for me as well. She says that for every 2 Zoltraks in your bind zone, she gives your front row units plus 5k. Zoltrak, I guess we can show you for a second, is the order card that you can run 8 of in a deck. You can play it from drop if your Vanguard is Fern and you Energy Blast 1 to play it. You bind it, choose an opponent's Vanguard, retire it. If you did not, and your opponent's Vanguard's grade 3 or greater, then you can choose your Vanguard and give it plus 5k for the turn. That plus 5k for the turn is important because Fern's effect is when you play Zoltrak, you can boss 1 and stand her in the main phase. And then you attack your opponent's Vanguard, and for that battle, her drive is 0. At the end of the battle, she stands. But if your opponent's Vanguard's grade 3 or greater, her drive is 1 instead. You cannot boost this attack, but this is like Ethics Buster from the V series in Nova Grappler, where you play this order, it gets to pop something, right? Or buff your Vanguard if you don't. So she becomes 18, or if she got more from her other effect, and that's even bigger, swings your opponent's Vanguard with 1 drive, attacks with that drive, and then restands, and you can still have your main phase and then go into battle phase after that and still have the regular 2 drives too. Top of that, you can also discard 1 to look at top 7 for a card that is either named Frieren, Stark, Sein, Jubel, Lant, or Haita, that is a grade 2 or lower Frieren race, and add it to your hand. So this doesn't search for herself, so you can't find persona, but this helps you add some of the other strong cards. So I think she's pretty good just for being like essentially a restanding Vanguard, and she also works with a grade 2 Stark as well, because that will also be a restanding rearguard that gets to benefit from the extra 5ks too. Then we have the grade 3 Stark. He says if your opponent's Vanguard's grade 3 or greater, your front row rearguards all get plus 5k during both players' turns, for this one only though. When he attacks, he combos 1 to stand a rearguard. Not too bad. Again, you can use the grade 2 Stark in this to attack with that, you know, once, then again, and then attack with this to restand it again. When he's attacked, he gets to discard 1 to also get plus 15k for that battle, but only once per turn. But you can run extra draws, I guess, and convert those, or just like normal units, convert those 5ks into 15ks. And he says when you damage check a Stark named Frieren race card or his specific order, if your damage zone is 5 or more, you can choose a card from your damage zone and heal it. And for the rest of this fight, you cannot heal by your Vanguard's effect anymore. So his order is the Ryu Goroshi no Hitofuri, I guess. You can also play this 8 of in the deck. You can play it from drop, and if your Vanguard is a Stark Frieren race, you bind it, choose your Vanguard, and for that turn it gets the effect that when his attack hits, you get to draw 1 optionally, and plus 5k as well, but if your opponent's Vanguard's grade 3 or greater, he gets 10k instead. So that part is quite good, because while that draw 1 sounds very appealing, there's a way to draw even more thanks to the Aizen. So Aizen says that if your Vanguard has the Frieren race, then he cannot be retired by opponent's effects, and when he's behind the Vanguard, if your Vanguard is a Stark grade 3 or greater with the Frieren race, you can rest him and give your Vanguard the ability for the turn that it gets plus 5k, you may soul charge 1, and your Vanguard is a continuous effect that says when this would attack, it can choose an opponent's column and attack all units in that column at the same time. So Stark is basically Vermilion, so that means if it hits all 3 targets, you're also drawing 3 cards from that order too. So I feel like all 3 of them are pretty well balanced, but also all 3 of them don't feel too egregiously strong either. The other card I'm going to put in the A tier is the grade 2 Fern. This card says if your Vanguard is the Frieren race, this card gets the following effect. When placed on rear, counterblast 1 or Energy Blast 3 to draw 1. And when she attacks, if your opponent's grade 3 or greater, for that battle she gets plus 5k, but if you've played a normal order this turn, she gets plus 10k instead. So 23k attacker that draws you a card, overall is like everything that you would want in a card. So again, I can see her being played in all of the Frieren decks as well, because this way you have 2 really strong rearguard attackers on top of your Tithfault reprint. Moving on to B tier, this is where I put the grade 1 Frieren. She says if your Vanguard is a Frieren race, then she gets the following effects. When called to rear, you look at the top 5 cards of your deck, find a Frieren race normal order, reveal it to your hand, and shuffle your deck. If you did reveal one, then you may counterblast 1. If you did not, you have to choose a card from hand and put it to soul. So if you can't afford the CB, you'd lose a card from hand for the soul, but if you can, then you CB 1. But she also says that when your other unit in the same column as her, or your other rearguard in the same column as her, attacks without being boosted, for that battle it gets plus 5k, which works really well with the grade 2 Stark. So that way he's attacking 15k on his own, this makes it 20k even if he's attacking unboosted, and then as you can see, both Fern and Stark also buff the front row by 5k or more, or you have orders that give 5k to your units, so you can also give that to the Stark, and therefore it comes in pretty well buffed. That being said, plus 5, like Top 5 for just an order doesn't sound very strong, and that costing a CB potentially doesn't sound that great to me either. So don't rate this card that highly. Also, sorry, we talked about Eisen earlier, but that is also a B tier card. It is good, but it is specifically just for one deck and that's it. So I either don't put it on this tier list and just put it together with the Stark, or we just put it in B because it can only be used in that one deck despite being for the entire nation. Land also lands here as well, being a grade 1, that this is actually not restricted to Freerin. He says he gains intercept as a grade 1 and can intercept from the back row, and during your opponent's turn when retired, energy blast 2 to add it to your hand. Nothing about this says anything about Freerin. This is a Keter Sanctuary generic common. Not too bad. So I could see this being used in other decks that, you know, could use a back row interceptor, like I guess Rezael maybe. Like you could play this in Rezael as a 1 or a 2 of, revive him every turn and have a 5k intercept from the back row. Doesn't sound too bad to me. And then finally Heiter, I would have put in A, but they revealed a Q&A that made me put him down to B. When you call him, if your Vanguard is a Fern Freerin race, then you counterblast 1, look at top 7 for a Freerin named Freerin race unit card, reveal add it to your hand. If you did not, countercharge 1. The reason why I docked this down is because they ruled it, pretty obviously I guess, that the Freerin Tithfault is only treated as Tithfault in this instance, therefore you cannot find it. So the only target in a Fern deck is the grade 1 Freerin, right? Because your Vanguard has to be a Fern, so the only Freerin you can find is the grade 1 essentially. And then in C tier is basically every other unit. There's quite a few, but most of them are just used as like they retire something or they stun something, and they're pretty decent overall, but I don't want to take too much time. And overall, I do think the Freerin collab is very solid. Like I think the arts are quite nice. They do have secret rares as well, and they look very pretty, and apparently their pull rates are pretty decent too. I think one of them will probably break through, but at the moment, like reading them, they all feel quite decent. Fern is the restanding Vanguard, which like traditionally would be pretty good, but Freerin has, you know, the 4 attacks per turn that do rely on Stark, but at the same time, you can revive him basically every turn. And you do have quite a bit of good deck thinning in this deck. So it's like you deck thin a lot, you get to activate a bunch of different effects, specifically in the Freerin deck itself. And then you're drawing cards, front row buffing and whatnot. So I feel like the Freerin deck is probably the best one. And then Fern after that, and then maybe Stark after that. And with that, that's going to be it for my first impressions of the set. I think overall, there's nothing crazy generic in this set. So it should be pretty cheap for a lot of people. Like if you don't have any of the decks that you play in this set, you can just kind of ignore it, which is kind of nice. But if you've played, you know, Jiva a long time ago and you're happy about the support, then obviously it's a very good one. If you're like me and you enjoyed Prison back in the day and now it's finally good again, that's also very much appreciated. But even the small bits and bobs, like I feel like Varga got 1 card and is a very good 1 card that I'm excited to be playing with as well. So let me know in the comments what you guys think about this set. And of course, I also did a box opening of this set that should be up by the time this goes out. So make sure you check that out as well and check out my pulls. And of course, if you're interested in how any of these decks work, I also tend to feature them in my channel member exclusive first-person POV fights. So make sure that you become a channel member if you are interested in those, and it helps to really support the channel too. So it is very much appreciated. But with that, that's gonna be it for me today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.